Hello there and welcome to gps0344 Advanced GIS Spring 2026. Thank you so much for being here. Unfortunately, I cannot be with you today because I had to travel to Germany for a funeral service. So that's why I'm not here today. I will be back on Monday. Today, Professor Ledoux is here to just help you get started with this class. So we're not, we're not just losing rather this entire class. Here's our course website. If you've taken classes with me, this is how I operate. Everything related to this class is on this course website. I shared the link with you via email. It's also linked from Plato. Plato really just has the grades on it. Everything else is accessible from this course website. And click on here, there's the syllabus, office hours, that fun stuff. Up here then, here's the tab for classes. These are all the classes. This is part 1, GIS refresher, today and next week, and then we'll do some vector analysis and so on and so forth. Materials and data. This is where I'm going to share course materials and data sets with you. All the assessment is here in this tab. So the projects, the assignments, the tests are all there. And then GIS resources is obviously just that, a bunch of good resources for you. That you can take a look at, maps, data, video tutorials. If you're interested in a tutorial book, perhaps to purchase, you can check these out. Let's go to classes. And, today, of course, is Wednesday, the 21st. Click on GIS Refresher, and that pops up the slide deck for this class. What you are watching here is just the narrated video version of the slide deck. So you can also just look at the slide deck afterwards if anything is unclear. So let's take a look at this, see what we got. Here's my standard slide deck. Let's click on slideshow. A few things, or 5 things we want to cover today. We want to make a map for the president. We want to talk a little bit about the basics of GIS. This is a review, things you've already learned in Intro to GIS. The same goes for map elements. You've already learned that in Intro to GIS, and projects and project packages. And then at the end, we'll talk a little about course logistics. You have 4 handouts. You have the course syllabus. You have a handout about map elements. You have a handout about ArcGIS Pro projects. And then at the end, we'll talk about assignment number 1. So these are all live links, so if you click on this, here's the syllabus, and so on and so forth as well. So let's go back here and bring up the slideshow again. So let's shake the rust off and let's make a map. Here's the scenario. Hey, I got this email from the president, and the president has to go into this meeting with the board of trustees in 30 minutes, and she needs a map. And simple map of the 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts as a choropleth, color the towns based on population, keep it simple, make it look professional, and then export the map as a PDF file. So 30 minutes, let's do it. I'm going to stop the video and see what you can do with this. Can you help the president and make this map for her in 30 minutes? All right, we're back. How did that go for you? Were you able to get yourself the data that you needed? Were you able to make a choropleth map? Well, some of you, are more comfortable with this. Some of you maybe are a little bit rusty, but not to worry. You'll have time and you'll have a chance to get that map all squared away as part of the homework assignment. Right? So for now, let's just stop, save, and let's continue on with the class. Now, little bit about the basics of GIS, quick review, right? Really nothing new here, nothing earth-shattering. It all starts with this basic idea. We call that Tobler's first law of geography. Everything is related to everything else, but near things are more related than distant things. So really what that means, if you translate this, is stuff on Earth is generally not random. That means we have spatial patterns, we have spatial relationships, and with a GIS, we can map them, and we can, more importantly, perhaps for this class, we can quantify them. We can quantify spatial patterns, we can quantify spatial relationships that we can visualize as maps. So that's sort of the fundamental, sort of conceptual part of all of this, right? Now, maps, of course, maps are awesome, right? As a geographer, I love maps. We love maps. Maps are windows into the world, right? And they give us context. They show us things, context that we can't see otherwise. Maps also, right, can create some bias because maps show us or tell us a story of what the map maker considered to be important, and maybe what the map maker left out and maybe deemed non-important. So this is also important to remember, that designing a map, creating a map, right, is a deliberate exercise in what do you put on the map, what do you show, and what do you leave out at the same time. Now, GIS is not a map, right? That's sometimes a little bit confusing to people, because what GIS really is a geospatial database, and you can make a map from the geospatial database, but you don't have to, right? Just because you're working on ArcGIS Pro, just because you're doing GIS, you don't have to make a map necessarily. Maps are great, but you can also visualize your analysis as a chart perhaps, or maybe a summary table, or maybe as what I call a GIS poster, where you put maps and charts and tables and text all together. You can also have a written report. You can turn your map into a video, or you can turn your map into a web app, for example. So again, right, it's tempting to think like, ooh, I'm doing GIS, I have to make a map. And very often we do, right? We look at the data spatially, and then we can visualize it spatially. But you can also, sometimes it's more efficient to summarize your results, maybe as a table, or maybe as a chart, or probably the best as all of it. Chart, table, maps, all of the above. Geospatial data, remember? Spatial data and attribute data, right? So that's a key concept, of course, of GIS, right? Spatial data, of course, tells you where something is located. And attribute data tells you what something is, but not where it's located. And attribute data is stored as fields in the attribute table. And for fun, I gave you the spatial data of my house. You know, here in the address, or your latitude and longitude, right? That's the spatial data, and here's the attribute data for my house, right? And of course, the power of a GIS is that it combines spatial data and attribute data. So you can do your analysis based on the spatial data, you can do your analysis on the attribute data, and of course, most importantly, based on both. Then you have the real power of a GIS. Now, basic ArcGIS workflow or basic GIS workflow, we're going to practice that, of course, right? And obviously, there's lots of variations to this, but generally, you know, you start with acquiring some kind of geospatial data. Very often, you will just get it, you will download it, you will stream it from some portal or something like that, ArcGIS Online or so on and so forth. Sometimes you have to make the data. You actually have to collect the data from scratch. And then generally what you do is first of all, you just map it. You throw it into ArcGIS Pro, you take a look at it, you open the map, you look at the attribute table so you understand it. Then very often there is some sort of selection process going on, because very often the data that you have, right, you have to sub-select the features of interest in some form. This could be a definition query, it could be a select by location, select by attributes, right? And then sometimes you might export these selected features as a new feature class. Then you map it and style it. Then comes the analysis, then comes the layout, and then you can share this map as a web map, as a web app, as a project package, as a PDF, as a JPEG, whatever the case might be. And then maybe there's another step where you take your attribute table and export it. You export it for further analysis and further visualization. Maybe you export it into Google Sheets, maybe into Microsoft Excel, maybe into R. All of those things are options, right? But generally speaking, if you conduct a GIS task, a GIS analysis, you're working in this basic workflow here. So one thing we want to talk about is map elements, right? So as you are, as part of the homework assignment, perfecting the map for the president, you really want to start thinking about map layout and map elements, right? And this is an important part of this. Here's a great quote. If we continue to cling on our technical skills, our swift march to irrelevance is all but certain. So this is interesting, especially in the context of AI, right? Where the technical side of GIS will probably become more and more automated, right? So what you also need to therefore consider is the visualization side, the storytelling side. The storytelling side, where you are the designers and storytellers of spatial data visualization, right? That is a key part of the story, right? You want to turn data into information so somebody gets knowledge to take an action, right? So making compelling, good, beautiful looking maps is extremely important. Now, couple of things to consider here as you're designing your map for the president is this concept of visual hierarchy, right? So the way you organize your map and your legend and your text and all the other things onto your piece of paper, right? You want to think about where you put the different map elements so that you have a nice visual hierarchy going on here. Here's another example. Here's a map that really has no visual hierarchy, no visual structure. All the pieces are kind of haphazardly kind of put onto the map. And here's the same data, the same map elements really, just nicely organized with a background color and frames to achieve visual hierarchy so there's a flow of information for the user to appreciate. So again, as you're making this map for the president, think about visual hierarchy. Map elements is another big one. Take a look at that handout. What has to be on the map? Right? What are the required things basically? Every map needs a title. I also like subtitles. You definitely want to put your name, affiliation, date on it. You want to have data credits. You want to have a scale bar, a legend, a north arrow, and some text. Every map needs text, right? You have to have some box of text, a paragraph of text to tell the story, to explain what the map shows to your audience. There's optional map elements, neat lines, logos, lat long, map projection, and all of this. Obviously, you want to make sure it is visually appealing. You want to make it professional, that it's error-free. You want to be well organized. You want to think about, do you want to go portrait? Do you want to go landscape? And so forth. So again, think about clarity, legality, and beauty of the map as you're making it. Project packages, projects and project packages, right? Remember that thing, ArcGIS Pro is based or centered around projects. The entire ArcGIS Pro workflow is centered around projects. Basically, you have to either create a new project or open an existing project in order to use ArcGIS Pro, right? And, as you create this, you want to make a folder on your flash drive for the project and all that. Again, you have a handout for that if you're a little bit rusty on this concept of projects. Projects are fantastic, right? Because you can think about a project as a backpack. So you're going on your GIS adventure, and the project contains everything you need. The backpack contains everything that you need for your current GIS adventure. package, right? The data, the maps, the tools, the layouts, and all of that is all in a backpack, right? And when you start a new or different GIS adventure, you need a different backpack, right? So that the backpack always has exactly what you need. So that's sort of the analogy of this. So projects are great. The project-based workflow is absolutely fantastic. Now, related to this are project packages, right? So there you are, you're working on ArcGIS Pro, you're working in a project, you have a map, you have data, maybe you've done some analysis, you have some geospatial tools, whatever the case might be. And now it comes time, you have a map layout that you want to share this with somebody, right? A great way to do this is to create a project package, right? How to do that, we covered in Introduction to GIS, right? When you create a project package, everything gets packaged together into one file. Perfect, right? And that file you can then send as an email attachment, or even better, you can upload it to your ArcGIS Online account and then just simply share the link, right? Project packages are great. And again, if you're a little bit rusty on project packages, right? Hey, I have a video here how to make a project package. Here's another video how to create a project package. And here's some quick links you can just click on, helping you to take your project and then share it as a project package. Good times. So those are project packages. Now, well, we're not going to play it. Let's talk a little bit about course logistics. What do we got, right? It's gps034401. We meet twice a week here in Wilson 202A, Monday and Wednesday, 3:10 to 4:25. Please, 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 if you can, right, come a little early, right? Find your spot, turn on the computer, log on to the computer, open the course website, pop up the slide deck for the particular class, and start ArcGIS Pro. That whole process takes a few minutes, and it'd be great to have this all done for the start of class. So please come a little early if you can and get this all started. Again, everything you need is on the course website. Plato is just there for your grades, so that's where your grades are going to be recorded. Now, take a look at the syllabus for all the details about assessment and rules and all of that. It's all pretty standard. What I really want to ask you to do is get yourself a brand new quality USB flash drive for this class. Right? Don't reuse some old USB drive you have kicking around, right? Get a reputable brand like SanDisk. It should be dedicated for this class. No other stuff on this USB drive. Get a brand new one. They currently run about $15 for 128 gigabytes, right? There's no textbook to buy for this class, but do me a favor, get yourself a dedicated quality USB drive for this class, right? Don't skimp on this. It is, you'll thank me later. And get yourself ideally a 3-ring binder or something for all the handouts and all the materials that will come towards you. So that's that. Take a look at the website, everything explained there. Take a look at the syllabus, everything is explained there. If you have any questions, if you're unsure, if you're uncertain, if anything is unclear, send me an email. I might not be physically here, but I can respond, and I will respond as fast as possible. Course expectations, right? That this is a difficult, time-consuming elective class, right? There's no way to sugarcoat this. It's a 300 level class, and you can expect to be busy. You can expect a lot of work. This is not an easy class, right? This is the real deal. We only meet twice a week, so please, please, please don't miss a class, right? That is just really important. Don't be late, right? You know, if you roll in 15 minutes late, you probably missed missed a lot already. I'm super happy to help you and support you all along, as well, of course, right? But just have these realistic expectations here for this class, right? This is going to be work, and the more work you can put in, the more effort you could put in, I think the more success you will have. Again, if you're concerned about all of this, please let me know. Now, let's take a look at this assignment number 1. So this assignment number 1 is due on Monday. So let's take a look at this. Here we go. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit. So a few things to do. Part 1, get to know the class, right? So first thing I want you to do is just simply, just look at the course syllabus, look at the course website, right? And decide whether this is the class that you actually want to take. If you have any questions, if you want clarification, let me know. Part 2, if you're a little rusty, perhaps, with ArcGIS Pro, maybe you haven't used it in a while, right? I have some interesting, easy, good tutorials here that you can take a look at. Here's a good video that you can watch. Here's another tutorial, another video. Here's another tutorial and another video. Creating a project, introducing everything. All right, again, you've done this all. This is all something you've done before, but if you're feeling a little bit rusty, I suggest you work through these tutorials and videos. And this, of course, will help you as we dive deeper into ArcGIS Pro next week. Part 3, right? Make the map perfect, right? So, based on what we've talked about, map elements and so on and so forth, visual hierarchy, and make the map perfect, and create a project package and share it with me. Put it on ArcGIS Online and then send me the link to that. Also, on Monday, bring along a printed copy, right? So print the thing, and we will have sort of a roundtable discussion and review of these maps. And then there's part 4, which is when you scroll down here, map design and layout. Explain and discuss your map design and map layout choices when perfecting the map for the president. What did you choose to do and why? So, think about what you did and why you did it, and document and explain your choices here. And, you can write this in by hand, or you can type it in and print it, or something like that. And then you bring this along to class next Monday. So that was assignment number 1. Again, that will be due on Monday. And that brings us to the end of our slide deck, right? We're not going to do that last slide. So what happened today? Well, you spent 30 minutes trying to making a map for the president. Fantastic. Then we talked about the basics of GIS. We talked about map elements. We talked about project packages. Talked about course logistics. You received 4 handouts: the course syllabus, assignment number 1, a handout about map elements, a handout about ArcGIS Pro projects. So there we go. So what's left to do? Make sure you sign the attendance sheet so that we know that you were here. And yeah, if you run into problems, if you have any questions, if you want me to take a look at the map, send it to me. I'll take a look at that and give you some feedback on that. Otherwise, we'll see you back here on Monday the 26th. Thank you so much.